All right, we're going to do kind of what I'm calling a video discussion. There's like podcasts out there, video podcasts, which I guess is kind of similar, but we just want to pick a topic and kind of break down a little bit about it and how we go about handling it. So today we're going to talk about traveling out of state to hunt. This is something that's becoming very popular. We want to do it from kind of a real life situation. So obviously I have a full-time job, Easton's full-time college student, Jake full-time job, young family, so we don't have a week, out of our time to go hunting always, especially out of state, and we surely can't do that all year long, so our time is limited, but we still want to make sure we're kind of checking off some of those dream hunts, if you will. So I think it was Easton 3 years ago when we kind of did our first out-of-state hunt. He really was the brains behind it and kind of took the leap so that we could start doing this. So he's going to kind of talk about that and how we went about planning those hunts.
Yeah, so we'd been wanting to go out of state for a while. I think everybody does. You get kind of sick of seeing the same old terrain over and over and over. So I think the biggest thing was actually just doing it. I don't know, remember, was it maybe a couple weeks before?
Yeah. It sounds simple, but it's literally just like taking the leap. Like,
yeah.
All right, well, let's do it.
It was really just deciding we're going to do it and actually following through. I think we'd talked about it before, like we should do it, but to actually go through with it was kind of the biggest.
It's a different story.
Yeah, so I think it was just a couple weeks before we actually went. We just decided, let's go through with it. So the first thing was actually picking and planning where we were going to travel to. So that's where your time spent online looking at maps pays off, I guess.
For sure.
I have a question here too.
Yeah.
How did you decide what state was going to be the one you went to first? Did you look at different states to see what the options were, or did you already have one kind
That's
of
a
in
good
mind?
point. I think it was just calling our name.
Kentucky is home. No, I mean, I think at that point we realized we weren't going to travel from Ohio all the way out to Montana to hunt, Merriam's. So Kentucky seemed like a pretty good option. It's known for being pretty good turkey hunting and
A lot of public land, too.
a lot of public land. You got Boone and all that, and it was just 3 or 4 hours for us. So it just seemed realistic. So that's what we decided on, and then we dove into looking at the Kentucky Division of Wildlife, Fish and Game, and obviously they lay out everything really, really well for us. So we were able to pick and plan out different spots or different options for turkey. We were looking at different types of habitat, difference in terrain, and what was close to where we were going to be coming from. Obviously, we weren't going to go from central Ohio all the way down to the north or southwest corner of Kentucky. So we picked some.
That's a good point. Like easing into something that you're used to hunting. Like that part of Kentucky is pretty similar to where you're hunting in southern Ohio. So it's not like you needed to do a bunch of research on how to hunt that area.
Yeah, you're not hiking up and down Rocky Mountains
Right.
that are 2,000 feet elevation change and stuff. So
That's a good place to start, somewhere that you're somewhat familiar with and won't be super tough to adapt. I
Yeah,
would say.
so it's pretty easy for us. And then honestly, from there, once we picked a couple spots that we might want to go to, we put together a gear list and all that. And a couple weeks later, we were on our way down south and had a great time.
I think the biggest thing would just be, it sounds so simple, but really taking that leap. So many guys, and we used to be like that, you talk about it, you get together for Thanksgiving and Christmas with your family, you're like, oh man, I'd love to go, out of state and do this hunt, but like it never really happens until you kind of just sit down and say, all right, I'm doing it, and
I think since then it's gotten a lot easier for us, because since then we've traveled to Nebraska, you and Corey went out to Montana. You got to break the barrier, and then after that, it's a lot easier, and you kind of become a little more familiar, and you can expand, the size of trips that you're doing.
Yeah,
and the question that you ask yourself when you are looking into doing this is, where do I start? And the real question isn't where, it's when. You just got to take that first step. Yeah. And then things fall into place and you figure out, like reading on forums, what your next step should be to find that stuff. So
it's so much easier now too with technology. I mean, you can just start Googling stuff, and before you know it, you got a pretty detailed plan of what you need and where to go. So I think the next important thing to talk about is cost. That's always something, if you invite a friend or a family member, a lot of it is, well, how much is it going to be? And that, of course, varies. But when you're traveling to a state that's close, obviously you're factoring in gas and whether you're going to stay in a hotel or sleep in a tent, and we've done all of the above by now. So the first time we went for turkey season, obviously in April, it can be hit or miss depending on the weather. So we ended up staying in a tent. We weren't very prepared though. We got soaking wet.
Slept in a truck one night.
Right, but we didn't pay anything, right? You know, it was...
Which that, I mean, depending on how long you're staying, I mean, a hotel anymore is at least about $100 a night. So
Right.
Well, and just because you got wet didn't mean you couldn't go hunt turkeys the next
No,
day.
we got up and we went hunting turkeys in the rain. It was a
That's
blast.
Right. That's right. So I think, I mean, it's hard to put a number on like an out-of-state trip, but we're going to give you kind of a rough idea of what it costs us to do these adventures. So typically when we go to Kentucky, as I mentioned, we have commitments, jobs, bills to pay, classes to attend. So we can't go, you know, Saturday to Saturday. That's just not realistic for us. But we still want to go on these trips. So a lot of it is maybe like leaving Friday as soon as we get off of work, getting in late and using like Saturday morning to quote unquote scout or kind of familiarize ourselves with the area. And then really a lot of times it's Saturday and Sunday of hunting, and guess what? We're coming home. So there's not a lot of time. But as far as cost goes, like Easton said, if you're staying in a hotel for a few nights like that, you're looking at a couple $100. Obviously, your license and your tag. I don't know. Is Kentucky like pretty comparable to a lot of states?
I've heard Wisconsin's a lot cheaper. That's a pretty
Yeah.
affordable state to hunt. Kentucky, I would say, is probably middle of the road, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I think that also...
It was like $250 for a deer tag. Is that right?
For
you shoot
four
deer.
deer on a tag.
You don't have to buy individual deer, either sex permits or whatever. Your one permit gets you 4 deer, depending on what county you're in. So you might want to look that up too. You don't go shoot 4 deer and then find out you're only allowed to kill
And then
3.
you have your annual hunting license, which I think is like $150.
Yep.
So you add those together, and you're right around $350.
Right.
So
Which for me, I hunted turkeys in the spring, and then I already had my license. So then this fall, I just had to buy the deer permit. And
Yep.
Which works out well if you're planning on going once for turkey, once for deer. Like you said, you already have that, so you might as well buy your other tag. So a couple $100 depending on where you're going, and we're just using Kentucky because we've done it for 3 years now and it's familiar to us. So that's kind of our example throughout this video. But couple $100 for your license and your tag, the hotel, couple $100. Obviously mileage depending on, you know, when we stayed in the hotel this past month for muzzleloader season in Kentucky, it was probably a 25-minute to a half-hour drive from the hotel to where we were hunting, but I think we filled my truck up like 3 times
once
the whole
on the way
weekend.
down, once on the way back.
Is that
right?
it?
It was just
Yeah,
twice.
it was just twice.
So that's $100 in gas, which depending on what you're driving, it might be more, it might be less.
We saved money by staying out on the public land all day.
Yeah.
Eating sandwiches.
Yeah, for
we
sure.
weren't going back and forth to the hotel all
Right.
day, so we stayed out there and saved money. But what you were saying too about how we typically, you know, you guys get off work on a Friday, I'm out of class on a Friday, and then drive down. That also plays into where you get to go. Like we weren't
Oh,
gonna,
for sure.
we weren't gonna get out and drive from Ohio all the way out to
Yeah.
Missouri to hunt.
Yeah.
you know,
Right. You're limited to like a 6-hour drive.
yeah, when you only have Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday,
Right.
and then you got to get home to be to work on Monday morning or
Right.
class on Monday morning.
That's a good point. That's going to depend on where you're going.
Yeah, so don't
Absolutely.
think you're gonna go halfway across the country.
Unless you have vacation days and you can spare it.
Yeah,
We've done that a
absolutely.
couple times too. You know, it's way easier to take a weekend trip and hunt, drive down Friday, get there late, use Saturday morning to scout, like you said, and then hunt Saturday, Sunday, and maybe Monday morning, and then split and get back to work for Tuesday.
Yeah, you
So
took off Friday.
Right. Now you've just burned a single vacation day, and you've
Instead
got
of
an extra 2 hunts. in.
Yeah, with turkey too, it opens on a Saturday. So I don't even know if I had class. I think I skipped class on Friday. You took Friday off of work, and then we drove down. Was it Thursday night or Friday?
I think it was Thursday night.
Thursday night, and then we scouted all day Friday, which turkey comes in on Saturday. So we had a full day of scouting, and you only had to take off one day.
Yeah, for sure.
And that opens up a whole new window of opportunity to.
Yeah, and skipping class, don't try that at home, kids. It's not recommended. So needless to say, I know we kind of got off in the weeds a little bit there, but I mean, it's for a few days of hunting out of state, it can be under $1,000 easily, and I think we've cut costs tremendously, like you said, by not driving into town and going to McDonald's and going to wherever. Now, you know, we go to the store, buy lunch meat sandwiches, pack them into the woods with us.
Yep.
So we go hunt the morning, we stay out there, we eat our lunch, and we head back out for the evening. So not only are you not driving around, but you're not spending money eating out and all that jazz.
If the
So
weather allows for it, stay in a tent.
Yep.
That saves
Right.
couple $100 if it. Yeah, when we go for turkey, we're in a tent. For deer, when you're in December, it's not realistic.
For turkey, like I mean, pretty much the license and the tag is like the expense, other than getting there.
You get
There's
some
not
food,
much
get
else.
some gas, and that's about it.
Do you remember what the turkey license and tag is?
I thought it was right around the same as the deer.
Wasn't
180 or 200,
yeah?
something
Was
like that.
was the turkey permit maybe $85?
I can't remember.
I want to say it might have
Well,
been
your
85.
your license is going to be the same.
150.
150.
150, and
the
I
tag
think
depends on the animal.
I thought the tag was 85.
Yeah, which we're going to talk in a little bit about rules and regulations and looking all that stuff up, because obviously it can change year to year. But yeah, not awful, very doable.
No.
So, and then obviously too, if you're going, I mean, if a lot of guys travel out of state and hunt by themselves, and that's awesome. I probably would never do that. I'd be too scared.
Yeah.
So, but if you're doing it with buddies, like split that, and you're saving a lot of money then too. It's so doable if you got 3-4 guys, which we always do, and then you're splitting the hotel or the gas, and it's a lot easier then too. So, the next thing we want to talk about is gear, and not necessarily like the hunting gear, but some things that we've taken and maybe forgot on our first trip that we make sure we don't forget now, that have really made things a lot easier. Ultimately, when you're going on these out-of-state trips, you want to kill something, right?
That's the goal.
So,
Anytime you go into the woods, that's
Right.
what you want to do.
and you want to be able to consume that meat. So, coolers. I mean,
Gotta have coolers.
Well,
have
and we were lucky because we got our hands on a Yeti. It's not a giant Yeti cooler, but it's a good cooler, and it'll work in warmer weather. But for us, like in December, man, one of those little igloo coolers.
oh yeah.
Anything
yeah,
that's just hard plastic, you can
40
get by
degrees
with.
outside at the most. Sometimes it's way less than that.
So you're looking at $20 to quarter 2 deer, and
Right.
You don't
put it in the back of
need
your
something
truck.
with 5-inch insulation walls. No.
That's a good point. Yeah, so you
Cheap
don't need this expensive coolers and break the bank getting them because you're going on an out-of-state trip. Yeah, especially if you're going during the winter. So that's a good point. To go along with the coolers, trash bags. And we made the mistake this past December. We had scented trash bags.
Great marinade.
Yeah, which I don't even know what the
The
scent
meat
was.
tastes awesome.
But it's probably not healthy. If we all end up with cancer in the next few years, that's probably why. But get yourself some cheap trash bags, throw the meat right in. And how do we divvy that up with the deer? Put the hindquarters in a couple. And
Yep.
Well, that depends on how you process it too, because your deer we processed first, and I had it down all the way to roasts pretty much. We didn't do
Yep.
like the front quarters, so we still had front quarters to take care of, but all the hindquarters were already broken down into just roasts,
Yeah,
so you can get rid of those bones.
that's true.
I had a lot of stuff that was going to be grindings. I put in an own individual bag.
Separate one, yeah. I put gear ties on here. I just got a list of some things we wanted to talk about. I found, I don't even know the brand. I found them at Tractor Supply, but they're like rubber gear ties. I don't even know how long they are. There's a pack of like 8 of them, I think. And I used those in Kentucky nonstop on our other out-of-state trips for various different things. I think my orange vest broke once, so I used it to tie it together.
Yeah, they're basically rubberized,
Yeah.
like bread, like a bread tie, but it's like
Yep.
that big.
Jake can put like a link to when we figure out what they
we'll
what
show
brand
what
they
they
are.
look like.
But that's
You
super handy.
found some unusual
Yeah.
uses for them that you wouldn't think of.
The cool thing about those is there's always that piece of gear, whether it's like a rangefinder that runs out of battery or your camera that runs out of battery, that you're constantly cursing on a trip.
Yeah.
And those things you were constantly singing praise to.
Oh
Yeah.
my
'Cause
gosh.
you could use them for
Yeah, your
so
book
much
bag
stuff.
wouldn't stay
Right.
closed, so you just tied the two
Yep.
whatever
Yep.
zippers together.
It was
Yeah.
raining nonstop, so we didn't want. Obviously, we're using muzzleloaders when we were hunting in Kentucky
And
this
you're
year.
walking a lot. You're not like
Right.
sitting. So you've got to have that thing on a
Yeah, you
sling
got
on
it
your
on your
shoulder.
shoulder.
Right. So obviously, you're getting rain down the barrel. So we took like a plastic bag and then wrapped the gear tie around it. It was perfect.
And, we used a gutting glove at one point and then
Yeah.
used the gear tie to tie
Yeah.
it to
yeah,
the
it
barrel.
was kind of a gun condom, is what I said. It
Yeah.
worked. It worked out
It really
well.
did look like it.
But yeah, that's something like I think it's easy to think about what hunting gear you need, and it's little things like this that's not even necessarily a hunting product. Actually, I'm sure it's not, but it's. I think I'll
Practical.
use that every year nonstop, and I don't think I'll ever forget them if we're going out of state again.
Well, and how many years have you hunted in Ohio? I mean, 15, 20 years that you've been hunting and you've never used those things. You go out of state and you realize the necessity for them, and now you use them every time you hunt in Ohio too.
I'm like specifically thinking of ways like, what would I use these for? Coming up with them. I use it to drag out I was by myself hunting at the time this year when I shot my deer, and it wasn't very big, but it was still a pain to drag up hills and everything. So I took my shooting stick and then a couple of those gear ties and hooked it to its legs, and I don't know if it was the leverage or the angle or what, but it made it so much easier to drag. I think Jake was proud of me because like I said, I'm not very innovative.
I remember. Because we had gotten your deer out to the
We had just
field,
gotten to the food plot.
And we saw him coming.
We see his head poking. We're like, does he have the deer?
Well, and I had pity on you because I knew how big that hill was because I had just carried all that camera gear up it. So I took off and ran to help you drag it.
At first we didn't know if he had it, so we're like, because it was starting to get dark, and you're like, we need to go get his deer out too. And the next thing we know, we see his arm behind him, and we're like, he has the deer.
Yeah, so I ran up there, and I remember thinking and feeling this way, looking at it and going, gosh, that's so freaking smart.
Probably never again, but yeah, that little things like that to make anything easier, which it just reminded me, we don't have it on here, but a deer cart too. That
We needed,
A good one that doesn't fall apart like
For sure.
most of them do.
We've added that to the list. Like you said, you figure out what you don't have, and then the next year you improve on it, and eventually you go pretty comfortably.
Keep a list of things that you're like, man, we need that the next year, and that list will just keep evolving each year, but things will get easier.
So when you are just hunting in your backyard, you get comfortable and you don't realize what gear might be handy. So the things like the gear ties and the deer cart, which will be handy hunting in Ohio in our own backyard, we didn't realize we needed or could use until we went out of state and had to use what was in our truck.
Yep.
So sometimes that can actually help you all around as a hunter.
Yeah.
It's trying to plan what you need.
When you're hunting here and something's an absolute pain, you have maybe 200 more yards to go till you get to your house or your truck or wherever. Right. Out there, you're 2 miles in,
right,
and you have your truck, and it's at the access point, and those things come into play, and definitely help you out.
Moral of the story with that: if you've never been out of state hunting and you're wanting to and you're planning to, I wouldn't rack your brain around like, oh, what's something out of the box that I might need that might make it easier. You just have to kind of do it and then see what you needed, what you might want to take in the future, and go from there. I don't think it's something you can sit down and plan for, really. You just have to experience it and then take note of it.
That's part of the beauty of the out-of-state trip, is that you aren't in your own backyard and you are there for a set amount of time with the only stuff that you can use is what you brought with you. And so success or failure, you're going to learn from it. And it'll make you better prepared for the next time you go out of state, regardless of what state or what animal you're hunting.
For sure. Like the tarps in the rain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the tarps, the first year, Nick and I went by ourselves, and first night was beautiful, and we actually ended up switching public land spots, went to a new spot, and that second night we were out there, and it started pouring, and next thing we knew, we had a river running through the middle of our tent. Of course, I'm cracking up. I'm literally in tears in the corner of the tent because the river is running right under his sleeping bag. Every which way you roll to try to get away from the water, it just follows you. So
I remember it vividly. I was eating Cheetos and I was just getting soaked.
Everything was getting wet. So that was the night we actually ended up in the truck. However, since then, obviously the second year we kind of planned for that. So tarps is something we didn't have the first year, added the second year. This past spring, we actually added a tarp above the tent, kind of as an awning with a runoff, a little bit of slope to it. And then we also put a second tarp underneath the tent. That way it would keep any moisture coming up from the ground, or if it was raining and there was standing water on the ground, it would keep it from permeating through the bottom side of our tent.
That was kind of your baby. He did he watched YouTube videos, everything, figured out how we needed to rig this tent to stay dry. And remember, it did pour, and we were dry as a bone, so that was a lot better.
Yeah, I know a lot of tents come. I think it's called like a footprint maybe or something. A lot of tents come with them. Apparently ours didn't.
It's like an extra foot around the outside of the tent.
Just to give you a spot to put your boots or whatever.
Yep.
Having a cot, too, to get you off the ground, I mean, that would help also, but it's just nice knowing that you're not going to have puddles with all your clothes and everything.
Was I the only one with a cot this past year?
Yeah.
And that helped too, not just with moisture and stuff, but it elevated me up, so I had my bed, but then I could save space I kept all my gear and stuff underneath the cot too, so then
It's a good point.
you increase the amount of storage and space you have in your tent.
It's a good point. So, Yeah, I mean, you're gonna, depending on where you go and what you're hunting, you're gonna have, like I said, various different things throughout the years. But you just kind of got to experience it, and that's part of the fun, I think. So that's part of the fun each and every year. Is, hey, when we do this next year, it's gonna give you something to look forward to, and obviously have a mental note of, hey, I got to remember this to make my experience that much better.
Yeah,
so,
we do plan and look forward to it from the time we get home to the following year that we're going to do that.
For sure.
So
I think the next important thing to talk about for anyone that's wanting to travel out of state, especially if you have a very short window to hunt, which we do, and most of you watching this are in the same boat, is making sure you're looking at the rules and regulations. And I'm not afraid to admit, I think the first time we went out of state, we really didn't, just because it's not something. I mean, we looked at the rules and regulations, but I think it's important to really dive in, and we're learning that more and more because different states have different rules and they change year to year, whether that's an antler restriction on, a deer, or maybe hours does on public land, like in Ohio, maybe the hours you hunt, like in Kentucky, I think you can hunt, is it all season that you can hunt all day? I know at least opening weekend.
I think it's 30 minutes before sunrise, 30 minutes
for
after
turkey,
sunset.
specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Which in Ohio, you can't at all times of the
I
year.
see what you're saying. Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
it's definitely something, whether you stop at like a Walmart and get just a rule book, or you can access all of that online now.
Yeah.
Just make sure you're figuring things out so you're not going to be,
Like I was saying, I think
tiptoeing around
you
things.
get too comfortable with your own state regulations and you just kind of take it for gospel. I mean, we've been hunting
Yeah.
Ohio all our lives. We haven't been out of state ever until just 3 years ago. So you get so comfortable with your own rules, you go somewhere else and you just think that's just how hunting is. But you start looking into the rules and stuff, and you're like, really? Some of it's surprising, but
Yeah.
A good example of that, whether or not we made the right call is a different story, because I've seen people hunt out of permanent buildings in Kentucky before, but this year we ran into an issue where on public land there was an old barn, and I mean, it didn't even have siding, it was just the beams.
structural framing, yeah.
And we were like, man, it's gonna rain, this would be sweet to hunt out of. But we didn't check the regs to see if that was legal to do on public land.
We didn't have great cell service, so we elected not to do it. It probably is legal, but
Betting on the safe side.
right, just in case, we backed out and went a different area. But
But the point is that when we did that, we split up. Easton and I hunted one spot, and you hunted a different spot, and we ended up busting deer that we probably would have got shots at had we been in that barn.
Yeah, had we
so
been
if
for
we had
rules.
only checked the rules to double check all that stuff, or called the
Good point.
DNR to
Create
ask
more
a question,
opportunities, yeah.
Yeah, so it can help you prevent missing a chance that you could have had otherwise if you just
Yeah, because
double check all
we
that
would have
stuff.
killed a deer a whole night earlier
Yeah.
had we been in the barn.
for sure.
Assuming
Wow.
your aim was true.
Yeah, assuming we could shoot. That's probably, now that you say that, like, I bet a lot of rules get broken by out-of-state hunters just because not because they mean to, just because they don't know.
You think out of state's bad. You look at within your own state. We have people, I'm in all these Facebook groups, and it's like every week there's someone posting, shot this doe on public land.
Yeah.
And after whatever it was, December 8th or something like that, you're not allowed to shoot does on public land.
Yep.
There's people that are residents to the state and don't even take the time to read their own regulations
true.
books. So going out of state, there's people breaking rules all the time, and that's unfortunate for both, the other hunters and the person committing this.
Absolutely.
The added benefit of looking into rules and regulations for an out-of-state trip is that it makes you more vigilant about what the rules and regs are in your own state. You start following what Kentucky's doing, you start being interested in what Pennsylvania's doing, and then you keep tabs on your own, and it's just a good way to make sure that you're not doing something or you didn't miss a new line item in the rules and regs for your own state.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So whether you're traveling out of state or just hunting in state, take a look at the rules. You'll benefit from it in the end. So I think the next thing we want to talk about is like setting goals and expectations when you're going to go travel out of state. I think that's really important because it really can make or break your experience. If you go out on a weekend hunt in a different state and you have Saturday evening to hunt and Sunday morning you're heading home, I don't know. You can, but I don't know that's a good idea to plan on shooting a 150-inch deer. Like, you might be
Even 100-inch deer.
right. You might be really upset by the time you're leaving, empty-handed. So I think it's a lot of fun that way too, at least for us. And we're heading out there and we kind of lower our expectations, which is okay. And then it's a lot more fun, a lot less stress, a lot less pressure. As you can see, because here are my expectations from this year.
Expectations versus reality. It's basically what it is.
So I got myself a nice Kentucky 11-pointer this year. But in all seriousness, I guess not necessarily lower your expectations, but just set a realistic goal for what makes you happy.
It's about, exactly. It's about what makes you happy. If 150 inches is the only way that's going to make you happy, and that's truly what you want to hold out for, and you can still have a good time.
Right.
Even if you don't harvest that, which likely, in a few days you're not going to.
No.
Right.
If you can still have a good time, that's great. That's on you. Or if you want, shoot the old 7-inch gross buck and be happy with it, and that's really all that matters is if you're out there having fun.
The good news about all of this too is that for us, I think our perspective, when we first went last year, it was the if it's brown, it's down mentality. We were going there specifically to hunt after meat, and that's because in Ohio, where we hunt, we don't want to exceed the limits of harvesting does on the properties we hunt, because then you won't have a good rut and you won't see the bucks that you want to kill. That's just specific to our area of Ohio. So you go down there and you go to meat hunt. You can shoot 4 deer on one tag. So you buy that tag. You can kill up to 4 deer if you want to. We have never done that, but
Not even close.
You go down there, and each year, we've been there 2 years now, you're building on yourself. So we've had the meat hunting mentality for 2 years. And we're starting to learn every time you go out and hunt, it's a scalp for the next 5 years down the road, where you might actually be able to go and try and harvest.
And I can see how we're moving towards maybe not killing the spike as we find new spots and kind of hone in on where the bucks might be.
Yep.
That's not to say that in 5 years we're going to kill that. We may be actually holding out for a nice little basket rack.
Great point.
Better than that.
Great point. Yeah, whatever makes you happy, and using that. Yeah, just like turkey too. The first year, it's like, man, we got all this information, and then the next year we killed a nice tom, and then obviously hoping to do the same, if not better, this year. So that first year though, and this video hopefully is catered to those guys that want to take the first leap and the first jump. Don't be afraid to just go out there and lower your expectations and have some fun.
Well, I mean, each of you now, that makes the 3 of us at the table have killed a deer in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I was just as jacked when I shot that doe in Kentucky like 2 years ago as I was when I killed most bucks in Ohio.
Yeah. That's
just a different experience.
Yeah, it's totally different, and it's exciting.
For sure. So I think that's a lot of what we wanted to hit on when we get this video out. If you guys have any more questions, again, we just wanted to use Kentucky because that's kind of been our trial state. We didn't ever travel out of state until 3 years ago when Easton took the leap and we went turkey hunting. And we plan to, I think, at least take 1 trip a year moving forward, as long as everything, as long as we're healthy and we're able to do so. But in summary, just take that leap if you're on the fence about it. Ask us some questions. We're just like you guys, full-time jobs, college, families, bills to pay, contributing to society, all of the above, just like everybody else. And we're still, finding time and ways to do this stuff. So we love talking about it. It's really expanded, I think, our memories, if you will. We have so many fun memories and adventures every year just that we wouldn't obviously have just hunting Ohio. So to end things, though, and kind of shifting gears a little bit, we got a couple antlers laying here that I wanted Easton to talk about. We're filming this right now. It's January 17th. And that sucker dropped when?
So this deer, he dropped on December 23rd. He actually dropped both sides that same day. This one was the first side to drop, and that was right around 2:30 in the morning. He exited the camera to the left side of the camera, heading south, and came back 3 hours later without this side. So I had a hunch that it was close, because it's very common for this specific deer to leave, bed real close by, come right back. I had corn at this spot, so I knew that's what he was coming back for. So I didn't think it was too far. I actually drove down and looked for this thing 3 days later and never found it. We walked for probably 3 hours looking for it, never found it. And then just this past week, I was back on the farm and driving the Ranger around and spotted just these two, just the G4 and then the end of the main beam here, just above some grass. The rest of the whole antler was completely buried. I have no idea how.
I don't understand that. That's crazy.
And I had to have almost stepped on this thing the first time I looked for it, probably 10 times, because it was 50 yards away from the camera in the exact direction that he went, just off the side of a trail that I know for sure I walked. So absolutely unreal how I walked past it, and then ended up spotting it from a moving vehicle, and then didn't have any luck with the match side this past weekend.
You'll find it.
December 23rd?
December 23rd.
That's insane.
It doesn't relate to what we were talking about, but Easton had the Antler, and I wanted to bring it on here today just because I think it could be a whole separate video, but December 23rd,
That's early.
That's so early. But I feel like on social media this year, there's been a ton of people finding it. Like, I saw a guy post the other day, he's found 21 antlers in Ohio already.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and so I don't know if that's, you always hear they drop early because of injury, okay? To your knowledge, this deer was healthy.
So to kind of give you some more specifics on this deer, he's either 5.5 or 6.5. We've had pictures of him since 2016, and we have his match side from last year, which we found, I want to say, right around February 23rd.
Talk about history. That's
sweet. So we have the match set, and for whatever reason, this deer does not really grow. I already compared it to, I should have brought in the other sheds from last year, but really he didn't grow much at all. And it's really not a huge antler for being a 5.5, 6.5-year-old deer. It's not. No, it's really not a big deer. Unique, yeah, has that big swoop in his main beam and everything, dark on the bottom, but there's a lot.
Like this.
Yeah, not quite as big as that thing, but yeah, there's a lot of discussion, and like we've been kind of digging, trying to figure out why would this deer shed. Obviously, injury is the first thing you want to go to. Was this deer injured? Was he hit by a car? Was he hit by a hunter? But I have thousands and thousands of trail cam pictures of him. Even recently, since he's dropped the sheds, I think we just had pictures of him on January 2nd. Looked at all those from every angle. He looks healthy. I was looking online. There was a bunch of people talking about as deer get older, they'll have less testosterone and can't hold on to the antlers as long. He's not an ancient deer. It's not like this is an 8.5-year-old buck, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
My theory has been, and if you guys have any idea or a guess or whatever, drop a comment and let us know. But my theory has been, I remember saying it in the stand this year that like this November, the rut weather that we had is like the best I can remember ever.
We had like 20-degree temperatures and snow, and we didn't have, I don't think it dropped below freezing for the whole month of December.
Yeah. So I think it was a good rut, but I think because of that, the bucks are more wore out. Maybe they rutted longer or harder or whatever that might be, and that's because across the board it seems like people are finding a ton of sheds right now.
Yeah, and that makes, like, you think about what's different this year, and we've had a very mild winter up to this point, and typically you hear a hard winter, a real rough winter where they're stressed out, they're having to travel for food, their bodies are wore out, and they just don't have the energy to keep their antlers on their head. This year, it's kind of the complete opposite. Obviously, they're still looking for food. Many food sources have dried up, acorns are depleted and everything. But I don't know if it could be that it's a warm winter or just, you try to think of anything that's just different than years past when most bucks are dropping towards the end of February rather than December 23rd when you still have 2 months to go in the season or a month and a half in the season.
Well, when you kill him next year, ask him, why'd you drop that early last year?
And if he buried the other one. Actually, I should mention the other side. So he dropped that one between 2:30 in the morning, and then he came back right around, 7 in the morning or 6 in the morning or something like that. And then he didn't show up until 17 hours later. So 17 hours is a pretty good chunk of time. And the way I thought of it, too, is I think he dropped that one right around 3:30 and then came back 3 hours later. He still fed sometime that morning, and then he fed that evening, and then he showed up in the middle of the night the next night. So he had two complete feeding times that he wasn't on any of my cameras at feeders or anything. That he was somewhere else that he very well could have dropped it. So
crazy.
It could be a few farms over, and I know that deer does like to move quite a bit. But
all I know is you got it before the squirrels, untouched.
Yep.
And that's a cool, pretty antler. So.
This though, the evidence for that is probably one of the reasons why the DNR decided, in addition to doe harvest numbers and population control, to limit doe harvest on public land.
Yep.
Because you easily, with a gun, could shoot at a deer like that.
Oh, and I've been
kill a buck.
I've been seeing it all over. I actually saw something this morning. I think when I flipped open Instagram
shed buck
this morning, shed buck that somebody killed, and
because you still have muzzleloader season to come, and
Yeah, I mean December 23rd, you got the first week of January, at least in Ohio, is.
So I think
you got
Ohio season's
muzzleloader
too
and-
long. And February 2nd, you got a lot of bucks without their antlers.
Yeah. You see it every day, people shooting them, which,
Yeah.
I mean, it can be an honest mistake or, negligence, but scary. 'Cause
It
to
is.
think that your number one buck could be one farm over getting shot
Without
with a muzzleloader and not even have
mistaken
the
for a doe.
Yeah, mistaken for a doe, and nobody ever knows until he's on the ground.
It's crazy. Last but not least, just what you can expect coming up. I think we're planning to do anyway, some videos coming up, kind of like gear reviews, but not because we're affiliated with them or somebody's paying us to do it. Just some gears, kind of like the ties we talked about earlier, that we really like and like actually believe in for you guys. So it's not a biased opinion. A lot of the gear review videos out there right now, or there's something behind the scenes where either they're getting paid to say something, whatever. So we're gonna have some videos out there that aren't, I guess, falling into that category. And then what else? We got shed season coming up, obviously.
Have you taken that survey I tagged you in?
No, but that's a good thing to bring up.
You could throw that up on Facebook or something. Actually, I think it's for anybody. If you've hunted Ohio or you're a resident,
Yep.
the DNR has a survey out right now that
Yep.
you can give your input and
Fill it out.
depending
let 'em
on
hear
how your
it.
season goes. So one of us could throw that up on the Facebook, and
Yep.
That stuff is important too because
it is.
It's cool
the
that they
DNR
do that.
doesn't. They don't have enough people to know what
Yeah.
issues hunters in Ohio
Yeah, and there's
are
some
facing.
interesting stuff on it, like the deer management unit, where
Yeah.
they are considering maybe breaking up counties. Because for Richland County, for us where we live at least, one part of it could be great deer hunting, and then another part is just farmland and not so great.
Yeah.
And so they're considering maybe even breaking that up into where they have bag limits specific to parts of the county rather than just the entire county, which could be huge
Yeah.
for.
Yep.
Similar to what they've done with the turkey season, where you have the north and the south
Yeah,
zone, and
right.
the length of time changes and dates change.
So important stuff for
Absolutely.
residents and non-residents alike.
Yeah, we can definitely share that. So other than that, thanks for watching. If you made it to the end here, we'll have some more videos, like I said, coming out during the off season, some different things. Other than that, though, if you're planning on hunting out of state, just do it and ask us if you have any questions.
Don't wear Nikes though.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, actually, we should thank our sponsors, ShamWow, the Shake Weight, and
OxyClean.
Yeah, and OxyClean. couldn't have got this without.
We wouldn't be here without you.
All right, that's all.